All right, so we've got some really good news when it comes to Team Canada. For years, heading into the Four Nations face-off, we were robbed of seeing these two guys play on the same team. But now, we're diving into it here, a double whammy after the Four Nations. Take a look at these tweets posted by Darren Dreger. Firstly, Sidney Crosby is joining Team Canada for the Men's World Championship. And secondly, sounds like there's a decent chance that Nathan MacKinnon will play for his country as well. This is crazy, man. Like, every single year, either one of Colorado or Pittsburgh is in the playoffs and not finding themselves a way to suit up in the tourney. Sidney Crosby, the last time he played at the World Championships was 8 years ago, in 2017. He's had a 100-point season since then. And after the Four Nations face-off, where he led Team Canada to the championship, this is what we're greeted with now. The Nova Scotia connection bringing itself back up here. Nathan MacKinnon also hasn't played at the World Championships for Team Canada since 2017. Both of these guys took such a long break, probably due to how much they're playing in the playoffs. So now, this is the best timeline for Team Canada and the international hockey scene. Oh man, this is going to be great. But this is actually not the real reason we are making this video, and it's not the reason you clicked on it either. We got a different title, we got a different thumbnail, we didn't really talk too much about Team Canada in those meta details, but this is what I wanted to refer to from earlier this morning. Take a look at this. John Busigros on Spittin' Chicklets said that I would like Sidney Crosby to wake up one day and say, I want to play for Montreal. They were my team as a kid. They're coming. They're on the up and up. I think if Sid's going to go anywhere, Montreal is the only place where he would go. And this is another conversation that we have been bringing up a lot over the past few months, but there's reason to dive into it again here. Because with the firing of Mike Sullivan from Pittsburgh, we all recognize that there was a really good connection between Sully and Crosby. So in a similar Quinn Hughes and Rick Tocchet-like relationship, do you think there's a possibility that because Sullivan is now out, Crosby reevaluates whether or not he would want to stay in Pittsburgh? Obviously, it's a lot, maybe too much even, to say that Sidney Crosby would all of a sudden want to leave Pittsburgh because Sullivan is not there anymore. Like, oh, hey, what about Letang and Malkin? Those guys don't have an influence on him staying either. But it is another chisel in the rock as to Sidney Crosby's situation in Pittsburgh here. Because if people that Crosby likes and that he wants to be around slowly start leaving the organization, like Mike Sullivan, like Jake Gensel from a while ago, then maybe there is a reasonable chance that Sidney Crosby one day wakes up and decides that he would rather play somewhere else like Montreal. Now, for what it's worth, we did actually have ourselves another conversation brought up about Sidney Crosby by another one of Crosby's former teammates. It was Louis Domingue. Take a look at this. It's a video podcast interview on Stanley 2.5 with Louis Domingue, a former Sidney Crosby teammate. This video will be linked in the description if you want to go out there and read it. And also linked is going to be this article published on dose.ca by Maxime Truman. Sidney Crosby would love to play in Montreal, says former Penguins goalie. The quote from Domingue says this: Montreal can be an attractive destination for players, even without Lane Hutson and without Demidov. Absolutely. It's Montreal. He would love to play in Montreal. Speaking about Crosby, he's a great competitor. It's exactly the kind of business he likes, but he's an extremely loyal guy. He's committed to Pittsburgh. I see him as a Penguin for life. So, Louis Domingue is going out there and saying that it's probably not likely that Crosby ends up leaving Pittsburgh and goes over to Montreal, but he does bring up a similar sentiment here, that Crosby would love to play in Montreal. This is the type of business that he wants to build off of. The momentum, the vibes, the energy. The team is on the up and up. They need a second-line center. Nick Suzuki is the captain, leading by example. There are some incredibly talented younger guys on the roster. And if they just got themselves one extra veteran piece that can be that top 6 center force, that can be a 90-point guy, playing in every situation that Nick Suzuki is not, and maybe being a net front guy on the second power play unit. And that's actually ridiculous that I even said that. Second power play unit? If Crosby was in Montreal, would he be on a second power play unit? I don't know. But imagine getting Crosby and Laine going together on the same power play unit. That would just totally make the Canadiens' PP unstoppable. And they're both making $8.7 million a year. That'd be so funny, right? Okay, maybe Crosby does find himself on the first power play unit. Maybe move Slav down to Unit 2 or something like that. I don't know. Hudson, Demidov, Suzuki, Caulfield, Crosby. I don't know about you, but that sounds amazing. However, it is all up to the man himself, right? It's all up to Sidney Crosby to decide whether or not he wants out of Pittsburgh. There are still some conversations to be had about the Penguins and whether or not they will be in a spot to potentially shed some of the other guys, the older players on this team, the Erik Karlssons of the world, the Chris Lettangs of the world, of getting Macklin. He's on his last legs into the next little while here too. They are going through their own youth movement, man. Rutger McGroarty's trying to do his thing. I do kind of question it as well, though, because Crosby did find some really good success with some different players this season. Particularly him, Rickard Rakell, and Brian Rust were one of the more unstoppable lines this year, and the Penguins ended up holding on to Rickard Rakell when they really didn't need to. There was a lot of value for him, and a lot of teams that were apparently interested in him and his profile, but Rakell ended up sticking around. So if the Penguins are not fully committing to that rebuild yet, Sidney Crosby might still be in the plans as well. And of course, you know, if you're Kyle Dubas, you have to keep Crosby around. You cannot decide yourself that you're going to trade Sidney Crosby. Firstly, he's got trade protection, but secondly, it's like, what kind of damage would you do to the fan base if you were to say, yeah, we're thinking about trading Crosby? He has to decide himself that he wants out, not the other way around. So ultimately, it will boil down to if Sid decides one day that he wants to go to another team. However, from a lot of the conversations that we're hearing, it seems like Crosby, if he was to decide to go somewhere else, Montreal might be a top destination there. So with that in mind, I want you to let me know your thoughts in the comment section below about Sidney Crosby and him potentially being a Hab. What are your thoughts on John Bussigross's comments on Sid leaving for Montreal? What are your thoughts on Louis Domingue's comments about Sid probably not leaving Pittsburgh and going to Montreal, but that Montreal would be a top destination? And also, what are your thoughts on Crosby and Mac Daddy MacKinnon suiting up on Team Canada at the World Championships for the first time since 2017? And also on Team Canada in general for the first time since the Four Nations a few months ago. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. I hope you enjoyed this British Ash Roll 9, and bye.